if you imagine that a planet is weak when it goes backwards, you always remember this example. Hello, welcome back to another video on astrology. In this video, I will be talking to you on the mistakes about retrograde planets. When it comes to retrogression of planets, we have to look at it from two different point of view. One, we need to understand the astronomical reason behind why a planet retrogrades and why it turns direct after some time. We also need to understand this from the perspective of a horoscope. Like from a horoscope, how do you find this out, whether a particular planet is retrograde or not? There are some mistakes that's happening with regard to retrogression, so that is what I will be covering in this video. See, the first point is that when people come to me for consultation, they tell me that it's so unfortunate that I have 3 planets retrograde. The word Vakra is, if you look up the Sanskrit dictionary, you will be told that Vakra means something like crooked or perverse, or so Vakra generally means going backwards, and so therefore they always thought that Vakra means bad. If you refer to the Shadbala chapter of Brihat Parashara Horashastra in volume 1, you will be told that if a planet actually goes backwards, it gets stronger, and if it is retrograde, it always gains 60 points in the Shadbala calculation, which is pretty high, and there are several speeds involved with the planet. It is not that the planet just is retrograde all the time. There is a stage by stage changes in speed whenever a planet retrogrades. So, for all this, Maharishi Parashara has given different kinds of strength. What happens if the planet is stationary, moving very slowly, then slowly, and then coming back to its normal speed, even in backward movement. So, all this has to be kept in mind before we quickly come to the conclusion that Vakra planets are bad. In fact, it is the other way around. A Vakra planet is almost equal to an exalted planet. There is another mistake about, or misconception about retrograde planets, is that when a planet is exalted and when it is retrograde, it actually reverses itself and becomes as though debilitated. They also say if a planet is debilitated and retrograde, it becomes like exalted. There are rules like this, but Maharishi Parashara in Brihat Parashara Horashastra has not mentioned this at all. So, the Maharshis are a different class apart, and so we should always value the words of a Maharshi more than anyone else. If you want to play a music instrument, you need to first understand the instrument itself. Without understanding the instrument, it is very difficult to play the music, because as you begin to play, you need to adjust it to whatever settings you want to, and without the proper knowledge of the gadget, you will not be able to play the music well. So also in astrology, because astrology is actually extracted from astronomical facts. One of the points against retrogression is that astronomers will tell you that astrologers are wasting their time because the planet is never really going backwards, which is true, because in the orbit around the sun, the planets just keep going round and round in one particular direction, and only the north node and the south node, which is Rahu and Ketu, alone goes backwards, and that too it will be only the mean Rahu and mean Ketu which goes perfectly all the time retrograde. From an objective point of view, there is no retrogression at all, but when viewed from Earth, so people say, why should you look at the universe from Earth's point of view? And they also complain that astrology is geocentric, whereas the truth is it is not geocentric. But let us admit that we always look at everything from our point of view. I look at the world from my point of view, you look at the world from your point of view. Therefore, it is always important that you look at the universe from your point of view. And for example, when I say the sun rises in the east, at the same time I make a phone call to someone in US and I tell him this, the sun is rising right now, he will say definitely it's not rising for me, it's setting. So which one of us is telling the truth? And the sun can't be in two different situations at the same time. So there is no absolute truth in all this, therefore it's always only relative to you. So when it comes to astrology, we are using that kind of logic because each karma is only relative to you. This is the second point, is that even though it is apparent motion, we have to consider it as serious, something very important. In this episode, I am just going to cover just the basics of retrograde motion, so that you will understand both from astronomy point of view, and also when you look at a horoscope, you will be able to figure out that a planet is retrograde, and or let us say if they have not mentioned that the planet is retrograde, if someone forgot to mention it, you will be in a position to even guess, no, I think this planet must have been retrograde. So by the end of this video, you will know how to do all this. And one more thing is that there are various systems in astrology. So suppose you are using Prashna methods like Prashna Marga. For example, a client comes to an astrologer and poses a question, and then the astrologer creates another chart which has got nothing to do with the basic natal chart, and he will actually cast the horoscope for the time, and even sometimes he may use another technique to get one more ascendant. So finally it's all about randomness, etc. So in those kind of readings, the meaning of a retrograde planet is totally different, because at that time during a Prashna reading, a Vakra planet actually means that things are not happening, it's going backwards, and so they'll always say that when the planet comes forward, the event will happen. So that is what has happened to astrology, because when people know many systems, they will take something from this and then mix it up with another system. So actually it is better not to do that. You keep Prashna apart whenever you are discussing retrograde planets. Then they also say that a retrograde planet is actually looking at the houses behind it, because it's going backwards. Actually it is a misconception, because when I walk, when I am like this and I walk like this, I look at this whatever is in front. So when I go backwards, I can't see what is behind, I still can't see, I only look at only the front side. So please do not expect that the planet that is retrograde actually is looking at houses behind it. So that doesn't happen. So aspect actually remains the same. And they also said because it's going backwards, it is weak. But take the example of an arrow. Now this one is an arrow, and this looks quite harmless right now. I put this into a bow, and then I start pulling back the arrow like this. You all know what this can do now. This is actually a real arrow. It can actually pierce the wooden board there, and this can actually become a very powerful tool. So if you imagine that a planet is weak when it goes backwards, you always remember this example. You also find in certain situations that you have to go backwards, because let us say you want to do a long jump. There is a big space between the point where you are and you want to leap to another point, and then you will have to actually not jump from the same point, you will have to go back and then come forward. So it is very important to understand that in retrograde motion, the planet is up to something. It has got a lot of ambition in it, because as you saw the arrow, it is usually aimed at some particular point. I do not see any possibility of a hunter or even an archer just pulling it just like that. He has an aim, it must go to a particular point, and this aim is like an extraordinary desire coming from a past life. And here we come to another important point, that the word retrograde has the first two letters as RE, and this reminds us of rebirth, reincarnation. Re is actually something that we do it again, repair and redo, all these kinds of words. So whenever a planet is going backwards, there is something that you need to do it again, all over again. And it is very important to note which planet is actually retrograde, and the quality and the nature of the planet will determine in which area are you wanting to go back again to it. And Also the clue can come from which house the particular planet is occupying, because you chose to be born in a particular lagna in such a way that your soul wanted that particular planet that is retrograde in the 7th house. If it is in the 7th house, there is something about marriage. So these people, if they notice, very important events will happen in the dasha and antardasha of planets that are actually retrograde. There will be lot more karma in them. How do we know that there will be lot more karma in these retrograde planets? This is very easy to understand, because if you compare to Rahu and Ketu, because they are always retrograde, and if you equate the retrograde planets to Rahu and Ketu, you will easily find the parallel. Rahu and Ketu, they always say, is never shy to give the result of the house that it occupies. For example, if Rahu is in the 6th, it will give you certain kinds of results. In 7th, it must give certain kinds of results, and so on. So a Vakra planet is almost not exactly the nature of Rahu or Ketu, but it is, in terms of its ambitions and desires, is surely as good as Rahu or Ketu. So when you see a particular result attributed to a retrograde planet, say Jupiter, you can be very sure that that result will definitely manifest in the person's life. If you Google retrograde planets, and if you stumble upon some of the articles, especially there's one which says it's on Wikipedia on retrograde planets. It says that a planet will go retrograde when it is the 5th from the sun, and then it will go on until it has reached the 8th from the sun, which is actually wrong. The fact is, it's not from the sun, it's actually the other way around. For outer planets, let's say for Saturn, wherever Saturn is, from there, as soon as the sun comes to the 5th house, the retrogression will start, and then the sun will move to the next sign, the retrogression will continue, then it will move one more sign and it will come straight opposite to Saturn. That is the midpoint of the entire duration of the retrograde motion, and then after that again the sun will go to the next sign and one more sign, and after that the retrogression will stop. Suppose you wonder what's the connection between the sun and the planets with regard to retrogression, because most of the videos that you may have seen will always mention only examples like there's a train here and there's another train passing by, and then it looks like as though it's going backwards and all that. There is no other reference point like another entity like the sun. So why are we referring to the sun? The reason is the sun is actually in the center. So we all know that, though we still say we are using astrology from geocentric point of view, it is an astronomical fact that the sun is in the center. So the center of all the orbits, even if the sun was not there, is actually the place where the sun is. So when we do the calculations, we are actually looking at the center and not the sun, but it so happens that the sun and the center is the same. So I will be doing some examples using the whiteboard. In some cases, you can consider retrogression as a type of clinging, a habit that has been formed. That is because you want to go back again and again to the same place. This is referred to as clinging by the Lord Buddha, and this is one of the main reasons for karma. And because we want to do it over and over again, a retrograde planet may actually connect to what we want to do over and over again, and therefore it has more fate in it. This is another way of looking at why retrograde planets have more fate in them. Retrogression by itself is not just the retrograde motion, it combines a lot of things. It deals with an entire process of retrogression. By this I mean that when a planet retrogrades, there is lots of changes in the speed of the planet. As the planet proceeds in one particular direction in the orbit around the sun, at one point, as far as from observed from Earth, it looks like as though it is slowing down, and it keeps slowing down. So it first begins by slowing down, and then it reaches a point of it becomes stationary. It stops, and then it stays there without moving for some time. Might be 2 days, 3 days, as it might vary from planet to planet, and then stops, and then again appears to go backwards. And as it goes backwards, it goes a little slow and then picks up speed, and then at a point it goes really normal speed, but it will be retrograde. And after some days or even many days, many weeks, depending upon the planet begins to slow down all over again and then stops, then again turns direct, but does not pick up speed very quickly, but within a short time it picks up speed, and there will be a particular place where it will actually become extraordinarily fast when compared to the normal speed of the planet, because it has to catch up for all this illusion that has happened. We all know that Jupiter retrogrades for 120 days, and the midpoint is obviously 60 days. On the 60th day, Jupiter will be bang opposite the Sun. This is called opposition. So, 60 days before and 60 days after, this particular portion is a retrogression space in the sky. So, when it comes to the exact opposition of the Sun, what really happens is, from your perspective, when viewed from Earth, you will see that Jupiter is larger than never before. So, it is big, and it becomes like a sort of like a moon, a full moon, where the Sun and the moon are opposites, and you get to see the full moon in all its beauty. So, you will see that during retrogression the planet is always closer to you. When something is closer to you, it has maximum influence on you. This happens for Mars, Jupiter and Saturn. Of course, it happens for Uranus, Neptune and all other outer planets, but in astrology we do not consider beyond Saturn. And if you take the inner planets, Mercury and Venus, they are quite different, because one thing is there will be never a situation when the Sun and Mercury and Sun and Venus will be opposite any time in your horoscope. Wherever the Sun is, Mercury will be very close to it, and just one sign this way or that way you will find Venus. So, in any horoscope you can't see too much gap between Venus, Mercury and the Sun. So, this rule does not apply to these two planets. Then how does retrogression happens? So, now you imagine that there is a Sun here, which all this I will be doing in the next episode. The Sun is here, and then you have Mercury here, and then I am on Earth. So, when it comes here, I have a retrogression, and this is the peak retrogression, and so I will have a retrogression somewhere here and here. But as Mercury goes round like this and it comes here, there is no retrogression at all, even though it is on a straight line. So, it has to come back here and then again only in this area. That means the Mercury or Venus has to get right in front of me, wherein it will be between the Earth and the Sun. So, this is the reason why if you look at any horoscope, even though you find Sun with Venus, it will not be retrograde all the time. But when retrogression happens, you will always see that Venus is very close to the Sun. That is because it is in between. So, the same rule applies to Mercury. It is very important to understand that the planets are brighter, the planets are getting aligned on one straight line, they are closer to the Earth. All this means that the retrograde planets are something really important in your horoscope, which is why even the software like Jagannatha Hora, you will see Mr. PVR Narasimha Rao has made it a point to put a planet within brackets, and when you see the bracket, you should know that the planet is retrograde. And you can always keep changing time of the dates and watch what happened before you were born. What is the status of Jupiter before you were born, what is the speed, was it really retrograde, and then has it entered the previous sign. If you have all this knowledge, then you will be in a position to understand what really the said planet packs in terms of karma. And very important point about all this retrogression is that you need to understand that sometimes a retrogression can happen only within the sign, which means the retrogression, the forward movement, everything will happen within the sign, it does not leave the sign. But in some cases you will see that actually it goes behind, it will enter the previous sign. These are very important because with regard to your birth, you wanted that planet in that place, that is why you waited that long to take birth. So, that is very vital information. And in the same way, a planet by Atichara speed will actually go into the next sign, and only to sometimes retrograde again, that is different, but it has jumped forward, it has gone so fast ahead, and so you need to understand why is it moving so fast, what is it regarding. There is extraordinary passion and drive to do something, and so you can't really understand whether it is good or bad without understanding the role that the particular planet plays in your horoscope. So if it is if the planet means bad, and then if it is retrograde, it can actually mean that you are going to do something bad, and all that with great passion. So that also is true. And so in order to understand retrograde planets, you need to look at the planet and understand the role of the planet, understand the placement of the planet. For example, if you say Saturn is stationary, for an industrialist it might be not so good, because an industrialist requires a Saturn that is very active, whereas the same Saturn might be very conducive to a sannyas, to a yogi, because a yogi actually is quiet and sits in a place. For him everything is just the opposite of running and moving around. He stays in the same place, so it's something about the fixed quality of the mind. And so if Saturn is stationary, it might help those who are in the world of spirituality, sannyas, those who are on the path of moksha. In the same way, if Mars is in Atichara quite fast, and then is also entered the next sign, and it is at that time you were born, then it means that you are so much physical, you want to be like a warrior. And so if you choose a profession that is requiring a lot of energy and speed and physical strength, then you will obviously have greater advantage. So in the year 2019, Jupiter is here, and the Sun will be here between middle of Feb and middle of March. The Sun will be here. So at this time there is no retrogression. Then when it reaches here, the retrogression starts, and it's not that it starts from here, it starts somewhere around here. As it goes from here to here, it starts from here. So when the Sun reaches 26th degree here, it starts. So what causes the retrogression is the actual peak of the middle point of the retrogression will always be when the Sun is here. So let us say if the Sun is here, this will be the middle portion of the actual retrogression. This is the opposition that I was talking earlier, and 2 signs before that the retrogression will start. So this time if you use Jagannatha Hora or any computer software and find out what is the exact difference, the gap between Jupiter and the Sun will be 116 degrees. So the moment it is 116 degrees, the retrogression will start, and then after that every day, with every day passing by, the Sun will go 1 degree after the other, and within a short time, around April 14th, it will cross over and it will come here, stay here for 1 month, then again it will reach this point where the midpoint of the entire retrogression will happen. Now this is when you will get the peak results of retrogression, the full effect of retrogression will happen, and this kind of a Jupiter will be extremely powerful, because this Jupiter will be very bright, because it is almost like full moon type, full Jupiter. The Sun goes over here, this sign, and then when it comes to Cancer. So if you use the software, you will find that when the Sun comes to 25th degree here in Cancer, the retrogression of Jupiter stops, and after that in the software you will see that Jupiter is no more in brackets. So the way to understand this without all the software or anything is, you just imagine a Sun here opposite to it, that will be the middle point of the retrogression of this Jupiter. Go 2 signs backwards from here, and from here the middle part, go 2 signs forward. This is the entire zone where when the Sun goes like this from here to here, this planet will appear to go backwards. So from here to here, the entire the number of days you will require will be 120 days. So if you refer any website, you will be told that Jupiter retrogrades for about 120 days. That is because you anyway have a 30 here, a 30 here and a 30 here. This itself is 90, and then you will share some degrees here and here, which will be almost like 34s are 120. which actually covers 4 full signs, but it won't be exactly at the border of the signs. So let's understand this time in 2019 Saturn is in Sagittarius Dhanush, and this is Aries Mesha Rasi, and the Sun will be here between mid March to mid April. The retrogression actually is aimed at when the Sun comes here bang opposite Saturn, straight opposite like this. This is the actual period of the maximum retrogression or the opposition, and which is when Saturn will appear to be the brightest and the largest as viewed from Earth, because Earth is over here. If this is the midpoint where you will get a full Saturn like a full moon. So if you refer 2019 around April using a software, you will come to know that when the Sun comes to the 15th degree of Aries, you will see the planet being marked within brackets, which means Saturn has started to retrograde, and then the Sun will go 1 degree after degree. Every day it covers 1 degree, and then it keeps moving. Then it reaches here, which will be April, May, June middle to July middle. This will be where the Sun will be when it will be in opposition and Earth is over here. So from when people look at this Saturn from Earth, it will be bright and it will also be closest, and then after some time the Sun will obviously move to the next, like this, and come to Leo. And this time, because Saturn is somewhat over this side, the actual retrogression stops when Sun is cat on the wall, just enters Virgo at 1 degree. It starts from 15th degree here and then goes on until the 1st degree. The gap is from here to here, it will take 140 days roughly. So 140 is slightly bigger than the previous one, Jupiter. Jupiter is 120. 140 will be more than 4 signs. Each sign is 30 degrees. So to cover 140 days, you at least it must be more than 4 signs, because 4 30s are 120, 5 30s are 150, and it's not 150. So it's actually somewhere between 4.5 signs. If you take from here 15 degrees it started, so 15 is here. So there is a full 30, 30, 30, 30 here. So this will be 120. 120 plus 15 is 135, and 1 degree here is 136. And if you look at the number of days that Saturn is retrograde, it is 140 days, comes to 38%. Out of every 100, 38 people in this world will surely have Saturn retrograde. In the same way, 120 out of 360 is close to 33%, and so Jupiter retrogression will happen to at least 33% of the times. So it's very important to notice that retrogression is not that rare, but what really matters is that you have to understand what it means for you if there is a retrograde planet. So in the next episode, I will be covering how to use the knowledge of retrogression with regard to the predictive possibilities of astrology. We have come to the end of this video. In case you have any doubts, please type them out in the comment section, and whenever I find the time, I'll answer them for you. And see you soon in my next video.